Intel note with assessment on Nepal, which talks about the January 2025 cabinet push to change laws and certain laws that seemed to be shielding the corrupt. Prime Minister Oli's cabinet in January 2025 earlier this year had pushed an ordinance and amended 29 laws. These laws facilitated land hoarding and gave protection to those who are corrupt, allegedly nullifying Supreme Court restrictions. This was seen as manipulation of the law and the power of government by those in power, the Oli government and more. The 2024 Supreme Court ruling against illegal land swaps was neutralized when the government altered these laws. And as in the case of Nepal, we've seen that this has been in anger building up for several months with several trigger points and catalysts. But remember, this is not new and wasn't a flashpoint that happened quickly. This has been simmering for many, many months, as this Intel note also points out. My colleague Anand Narasimhan is joining us with more on this. It's a series of missteps that are painting a picture of what really transpired in Nepal, Anand.
Yes, Shivani, and here on CNN News 18 for our viewers, we are trying to deconstruct and also perhaps somewhere get the background of what brought about this entire Takhta Palat in Hindi, as they say, or regime change in English, in 48 hours. In fact, many would say less than 48 hours. What was it? It was a slow, steady build-up of two main important planks. One was corruption and the other one was impunity, or the brazen disregard for law and order, and especially among the Nepalese political elite. Now, we showed the impunity via the video that triggered the incident that happened in Koshi with the VVIP hitting the girl on the 6th of September. But the other aspect, the other plank, or because of which the Sharma Oli government lost footing or trust, public trust, was corruption. And this has been a burning issue within Nepal for a while. You talked about the Jan 2025 legislation, but before that in 2024, the Supreme Court ruling against illegal land swaps was neutralized when the government later altered laws, and this was seen as the government giving open protection to the corrupt. Now, the CIAA data between 2022 to 2025 shows 17 IT-related corruption cases of around 9 billion rupees, including telecom billing fraud of 3.2 billion and server procurement scams. So, multiple scams within the KP Sharma Oli-led government, and nothing being done. And these corrupt were getting state protection, and corruption had become the norm. Now, this was becoming a huge trigger, a boiling point, because there's also large-scale unemployment, which was manifest. More than 12.7%, the unemployment rate had gone up in Nepal. So this also emerged as one of the biggest, single largest, in fact, IT, information technology, emerged as one of the biggest corruption sectors. And the youth saw this both at policy level corruption and also the elite profiteering through their position, using their office for profit. So this is the entire corruption saga, because of which we saw the outrage more than a decade ago in 2011, 2012, when India Against Corruption became a movement in Bharat. It's a similar kind of a sentiment that the Gen Z was feeling, the youth were feeling, and the youth means that this is somewhere between 16, 18 years old till about 34, 35 years old. And that's the age group, largely the age group of the protesters that we've seen. Manoj Gupta getting us more details, saying that in June 2025, 334.8 million irregularities involving senior executives caused major damage to the reputation of the state enterprises also. So it's just layer by layer, and in July, 6 officials indicted for 158.8 million rupee corruption, misappropriation, and this confirmed the systemic abuse and government procurement. In May 2025, visa racket was busted, and Joint Secretary Tirtharaj Bhattarai revealed how high-level officials were making money in basic services. So at every level, corruption and then impunity, absolute disregard for law and order and public order, and more importantly, civilian life by the VVIP. This was manifest on 6th of September, and then economic stagnation and youth unemployment then added it with this entire increase of ire against the elite, the political elite.
Absolutely. And you know, the youth in Nepal are saying that most of us have to go overseas to work to earn our livelihood. There are no opportunities within the country. But the children of the elite, also being called Nepo kids, they were enjoying and flaunting their lives on social media apps, etc. And the contrast was getting too much to handle for the youth of Nepal.
It was, and that was what was manifest in the vandalism and the arson that happened, where the anger was taken out against establishments and entities or ministers who were seen as corrupt, who were seen as the political elite, and who were seen as showing brazen disregard for public discontent and public sentiment, and perhaps a certain impunity with the law. And the elite and their children enjoying the riches while the common people suffer and they are facing joblessness and economic stagnation. This was a sentiment that was up on the rise. And yes, things turned very, very violent with respect to what happened in Nepal. And it has a corollary or perhaps parallels drawn with what happened in Dhaka and in Colombo.
Yes.
But let's also not forget what happened in Bharat in 2011, 2012, where protests were peaceful. But it was the people coming out and saying we have had enough of corruption and policy paralysis. And remember VVIP racism campaigns that ran against this entire Lal Batti mentality? It's a similar sentiment that's also now being seen in Nepal. Although we just hope that the violence now dies down and these leaders are all out, and it's a fresh group of leaders that now emerge in Nepal's polity to take the nation forward.
Yes, thankfully, of course, in India, most of these protests, even if there are class wars that have happened over the past few decades, or public, agitations over the issue of corruption, have been by and large peaceful, which is why India is being seen, Anand, as very different than some of our neighboring countries that have had far more instability and a lack of political accountability. In India, of course, there's a certain balance that is maintained between that, and therefore there is a certain level of responsibility that Indian citizens also display when it comes to expressing their anger as well. So it's, political accountability not existing, impunity that you talked about. I mean, that accident case that we are also highlighting for our viewers today, Anand, KP Sharma Oli's response was, this is a regular incident, despite the fact that a provincial minister's car virtually, just flew away despite hitting a young girl, not offering any medical assistance, etc. Thankfully, that girl is okay, but it shows the mindset of high-handedness and impunity.
Absolutely, and the director should go back to those visuals since you're making a reference of that. And the issue was not that a girl got hit by a car. The fact was that the car didn't even bother to stop. It was a VVIP, and he thought that he could just bang that person, bang that girl, and then just drive away. And look at the motorists and the people who were coming from behind. They stopped, they looked at it, they tried to help the girl later on. But that's where perhaps that was the trigger, that was a tipping point saying enough is enough. We're not going to take this anymore. And that's why the uprising, the revolt happened. And then KP Sharma Oli's comment was further dismissive, like Shivani, you were mentioning. And that further brought the anger out. And that's the reason why all former prime ministers, all those leaders who were part of this coalition and who kept mum when KP Sharma Oli went on doing this, and KP Sharma Oli himself being in denial. He's a tall leader, he's a seasoned politician, has been Prime Minister of Nepal before, but all current Prime Minister and former Prime Ministers, and also those who are involved in government, look at the treatment that they got. The Finance Minister was not only kicked on the streets, he was stripped and made to run through the nala, and he was further beaten with his head covered on a helmet. That's the level to which the anger was against certain ministers and certain VVIPs because of this impunity that was on display in this video. This went viral.
Yes.
And one of the reasons why that social media ban happened, and many believed, was because this kind of this video went viral, and along with that, the entire corruption story was being unfolded on social media, and that was making the KP Sharma Oli-led government very, very uncomfortable. Yes. So social media ban was not such a big trigger as much as corruption and impunity, and along with that, economic stagnation and unemployment.
Yes, absolutely. Well, it's important, of course, to remember, Anand, as I thank you, that violence, of course, cannot be condoned in any situation, but it is just offering a perspective on what really led to this kind of what seemed sudden outburst of an unprecedented nature, and within 48 hours, an entire government and machinery being brought to its knees.